Hello everyone, it's Farket here. And in this video, I'm going to cover an interview the Escapist had with Endnight. Now, they only asked 12 questions or so. They didn't get much new information, but it's enough for me to want to cover it because they asked different questions. Obviously, journalists have a bit more experience in getting information out of people. Well, compared to me anyway. My only training has been a police officer, and I wasn't able to use a phone book. Now, just a side note, I'm currently holding my microphone because I bought a Samsung Odyssey G9, and it's taken up my entire workspace. So I had to remove my microphone mount. So I'm actually holding it right now. Luckily, it's my microphone, and it's only 250 grams. If it was a Blue Yeti, it would be a kilo. I think my arms would get tired by the end of the video, but moving on. There will be a link in the description to this interview if you'd rather read it. Now, the person who conducted this interview was named Nick Calandra, and based on his interview, he does seem like he's a pretty good journalist, which is a rare thing these days. Though hopefully this guy can set an example for other journalists. I'm going to read a little bit from his intro, and then I'll get into the questions. I'll have timestamps in the description. In his intro, he says, "It's not easy to get details out of Endnight games before it's absolutely ready to share them. For many times as I've interviewed Endnight, I still feel the small indie studio remains shrouded in mystery. It's a developer that would seemingly rather see people just play and discover its games, rather than spend a lot of time talking about them, which tends to be outside the norm with today's focus on social media and viral marketing." Now I read that with a smile on my face the whole time because it's so true, but it's so good. I'm so glad Endnight games are like this. Anyway, moving on. Nonetheless, I reached out to Endnight Games after the latest trailer to see about getting some more info on Sons of the Forest. And in true Endnight Games fashion, they accepted the interview but kept their answers pretty darn vague. I mean, if he's had previous experience with Endnight, I'd say you'd be better off asking questions that you probably know you're going to get an answer to. I know a lot of people wanted me to ask more questions about the story and stuff, but I knew it was going to be a waste of time. And plus, why would you want to know about the story anyway? It's like watching a review that has spoilers in it on a game or a movie that you want to see or play. Just doesn't make sense. Anyway, moving on to the questions. Question 1. Congrats on announcing Sons of the Forest. How have things been going since you launched The Forest? It's hugely popular on Steam. So what kind of changes has this brought to the studio? Their answer: we've stayed relatively small but moved into nicer and bigger offices and have been able to hire some of the best developers in the world as a result of the success of the first title. Question 2. The trailers for Sons of the Forest have been pretty cryptic, so maybe you can't answer this one yet, but are you able to tell us a little bit about the narrative of this game and whether it's a sequel or a prequel to The Forest? Their answer: it's a sequel, but we can't go into too much detail as we want to avoid spoilers. Question 3. It looks like Sons will have a bit more of a direct narrative, more scripted moments than the original game had. Can you expand on this bit without getting into spoilers? Their answer: it's an expansion on the type of visual storytelling we did in the first game. There will be very little dialogue and focus on players uncovering the story versus being forced to sit through long cutscenes. Oh, this is great. Visual storytelling, that's the word I've been looking for a very long time to describe what The Forest was about. I have a feeling Endnight are old school gamers, in the same sense as me. See, I grew up with those older games where there was no cutscenes, there was no forced storytelling, it was just about gameplay. And growing up and being forced to sit through that crap, oof, it's not good, man. I'm getting old. I don't want to deal with that crap. Question 4. Where does the game take place? Will there be more varied environments with things like dynamic weather for players to survive in this time round? And will these different environments force the players to move around the map a bit more? That's actually a really good question. I wish I'd asked this one. Their answer: it's based on Site 2 map, which is briefly glimpsed on the wall at the end of the first game. This time we've added dynamic seasons, which affect every part of the map. In winter, snow covers everything. In spring, maple leaves turn orange and fall from trees. In summer, salmon jump upstream, and turtles lay eggs on the beach, for example. How to survive, what food sources you have, and the world visuals all change dynamically, giving a different experience as the seasons come and go. So that's really cool. We're going to get turtle eggs. I don't know why, but that's the thing that stood out to me, probably because it was the only thing that didn't know about, really. I knew the other stuff was going to happen, but it's good to see that they're going into a bit more detail. What I think this is going to mean, though, is that in summer, autumn, and spring, you'll be able to grow gardens and stuff, but in winter, they'll probably die. So you have to find other food sources. I'm guessing winter is going to be the hard mode of the game because you probably won't be able to fish. I'm guessing rivers might freeze up a bit. I suppose fish still exist. I don't know. I don't live in the northern hemisphere. I don't know how snow works. I've only seen snow about 3 times in my life, and it wasn't very exciting because it was crappy snow. Anyway, moving on. Question 5. Can you describe some of the big gameplay changes coming to Sons of the Forest? The trailers show off some more advanced looking survival mechanics. The digging mechanic looks especially good, and new types of weapons including firearms, but they also hint at potentially more peaceful ways of dealing with the AI than the first game offered. Their answer: for the sequel, we wanted to take the next step in what a survival game could be. Digging is new, along with 3D printing to augment the crafting system. But beyond that, we've attempted to refine and improve every system. Building is more satisfying and immersive. Crafting is more visual, and guns and other non-lethal weapons add more interesting combat options. We're also focused on the interactions between the inhabitants and this world you're exploring. So there's two things that stand out really well for me there. The non-lethal weapons. I'm not sure what that means. That might mean that you use them to communicate with the cannibals and such. But also, and the second thing is basically the part that's straight after it anyway, which is the interactions between the inhabitants. In the forest, a lot of people wanted to know if you could make peace with the cannibals and that, and you can't unless you glitch the game, which I don't think you can do it anymore. It's definitely going to be interesting. I think what they could do to really amp it up is have different tribes interacting with each other. So, you can make friends with one and they'll give you perks, and you can go to war with another tribe. That would be interesting to see. But there's so many ways they can go with it that would just be so good. Question 6. For many, the AI was one of the most exciting aspects of the forest. Can you talk a bit about the advancements being made there, and maybe describe some of the new peaceful and violent interactions players might have with them? This is also a very good question. I should have asked this. Their answer: AI is the main focus of the new game. For Sons, we have created a new AI tool that we call V.A.I.L. V.A.I.L. This tool allows the creation of some extremely complex behavior, and characters can now become afraid, tired, angry, hungry, thirsty, bored, etc. And these feelings influence their decisions. We're really excited for players to get a chance to experiment with the inhabitants. This sounds really cool. It sounds like it's going to be pretty good. It might be the best we've ever seen in a game, though it's starting to sound a little bit like The Sims. Just a little bit, but I doubt it's going to be like that. We'll see. The Sims is fun anyway. Everyone likes The Sims, unless you're an edgy zoomer. Question 7. Are you continuing to lean heavily into survival horror roots of the original game? Their answer: Sons of the Forest exists in the same universe as the Forest, so we're bringing back a lot of the same themes and feel to this game. We'll be expanding on some of the ideas we introduced in the Forest and adding some new ones which players should find unnerving. So that's pretty cool. I didn't even think that it might be in a different universe, but it was pretty obvious it was going to be. But yeah. Question 8. Enemies seem to interact with your base in a much more advanced way in the new trailer. I noticed enemies stealing resources, working to actually break into your cabin, etc. How are the base mechanics evolving with the rest of the game? Their answer: in addition to stealing logs, the new AI allows for much more coordinated attacks on your base and more interesting interactions. For instance, the AI can use zip lines to get into your base. They can steal resources from you, or may just want to torment you. They make decisions based on their individual objectives and experience, making them feel more alive than the first title. So this is really cool. I wouldn't have thought to ask this question, but he got a very good answer out of it. The idea of the AI using zip lines to get into your base is pretty cool. The first thing that came to mind from this one was the enemies using zip lines to get into your base. And the first thing I thought of was, what if we could use metal wire on the zip lines instead of rope? Because then you could probably take a battery to it. You can see a cannibal coming down the zip line, you attach the positive and negative to it. Man, that would be freaking funny to watch. They probably won't add it, but it'll be a seriously good way to get them off. I mean, you could just shoot them off with a bow or something, but that'll just be spicy. It'd be great. I can imagine that people are going to set up traps at the other end of their zip lines. I know I will. I'll be figuring out that mechanic ASAP. You could probably have fire pits that they'll land in and stuff like that, or just cages and stuff. So every time you land, you open up the door and you lock it on the way out. And that way, if they do come in, they're going to be stuck in that room. Just chuck a few windows in there, and that way you can shoot them while they're in there. Or depending how much they go in with the AI, what you could actually do with them. Could have a lot of fun. Question 9. Will Sons of the Forest contain cooperative play at launch as opposed to being added later? Their answer: yes, it will have a full multiplayer experience on launch. So I already knew this, even though I didn't specifically ask this. The reason I knew this is when I asked about multiplayer, they said they were really excited about some of the features they were going to be adding. And that's just a clear sign that, yeah, that's going to be there on release. I guess it's good to have it confirmed. Question 10. Will this launch as an early access title or a full 1.0 release? Their answer. We will announce more details about the release closer to launch. I got that answer. It's almost like a copy faster. Though I think it will release an early access title. It'll be so much easier for them to work on a game when people are beta testing it for them, finding all the bugs, etc. Question 11. You supported the Forest quite a few years even after 1.0. Is the plan to do the same with Sons of the Forest? Their answer. Definitely. That's actually a really good question. And it's good to get that answer because the Forest pretty much was done. They released, I think, 12 patches on PC. They didn't really add too much to the game. It was more like wooden cars, TVs, human effigies, coffins, churches. I mean, the stuff was all right, but yeah, they also added the worm. Yeah, we'll see what happens. But I think they were just burnt out by the end of it. They've been working on the game for, I think, 4 years, and it's their first major title, not including their original game called Endnight. You can't even get it anymore. It's an iPad game. You can't download it on the Apple Store anymore. You can check out footage of it. You can notice some of the assets from that game is in the Forest, but it's nothing major. Anyway, time for the last question. Question 12. Do you have a more specific timeline for the release of Sons of the Forest other than just 2021? And what platforms is Sons of the Forest coming to? Their answer. We're not ready to announce a more specific date yet. We only announced the PC release so far. Now I have a feeling this journalist definitely hasn't seen my videos. Though journalists probably think that YouTubers don't get exclusive content. They think that journalists get it. I don't know. It's hard to say. Though I'm going to put forward a prediction of when it's going to come out. And this is just based on things I've seen and the way Endnight's operated. Now I'm predicting late April or early May release, 2021. Unlikely that it will be the 1st of May because that's when the Forest originally first came out. And when they went full release, it was at the end of April. So I think as a part of tradition, they might be trying to get it for that. And I hope that Endnight doesn't watch this and say, oh, we've got to subvert expectations. I hope they don't pull a J.J. Abrams on me. Though that's just my prediction. It will probably come out in an early access at the end of April or the start of May. Though that is purely prediction. Do not take that as fact. Anyway, that was the end of the interview. I think the interviewer did pretty good. He asked some pretty good questions and got answers and information that I didn't get. And I had 2 Q&As and over like 30 something questions. So I think he did pretty good. I'd assume that more interviews like this will be coming out. If you really want to stay on top of this and find the information ASAP, all you do is search Google and you type in Sons of the Forest and change that, and you change the date range, because otherwise the most popular titles will come up, which would be like IGN and probably my videos. But if you want the latest information, it's probably the best way to do it. So yeah, it's good that Endnight are doing more Q&As. There's probably going to be more interviews with more information. So it's good. Anyway, if you like this video, make sure you like and subscribe. Cheers.